In our difficult economic times, the faces of hardship don't always match expectations or appear where we think they should.
Being, a gentleman in his late 50s looking for full employment, it's not quite as attractive, I think, in many cases. I was on public assistance, I was on access, and food stamps, and I'm not, embarrassed to say that. That's a reality.
Poverty comes to the middle-class suburbs of Phoenix and Tucson. It's Arizona Week.
Production of Arizona Week is made possible in parts by a grant from the Stonewall Foundation and by the members of Arizona Public Media. Thank you for your continued support.
Once again, your moderator, Michael Chiha.
We conclude Arizona Public Media's week-long series on poverty by focusing on its increase in suburban Phoenix and Tucson, where location alone ought to infer a lifestyle without hardship. We'll start with one man's story.
My name is Jim Corcoran. I live here in Tucson, Arizona. I'm employed by the Natural Resources and Parks and Recreation Department of Pima County. I am a recreation leader at the Picture Rocks Community Center in Picture Rocks, Arizona. Basically, my background is in exercise and sports sciences, higher ed administration, athletic departments, coaches education, drugs and sports, those kinds of things. And did that for a number of years and coached and got involved heavily with youth sports and coaching education, those types of things. And then I kind of switched gears a little bit and went off into like sales and marketing and so forth. And but things were kind of not moving so well in Chicago for me, so I came out to Tucson in February of 2010. And at that point, it was the market was pretty rough. It was pretty difficult at that point, even. And but I was fortunate enough to earn a position at the Northwest YMCA here in Tucson in their membership and marketing department, and worked there for a while, which was an awesome experience. I've worked with YMCAs in Chicago and Philadelphia in the past as well, as part of my journey in wellness and sports and so forth. And so this opportunity was great, worked with them for a while, and then things just kind of changed and ended up being unemployed, just given the nature of what was going on in the market at that time and YMCA's needs and my needs and so forth. And that just was, it was a difficult time to be unemployed. Again, the market had not improved. And so I kept pursuing, employment. Came here to ICS. Had heard about them from a friend in Tucson and walked in, met Tandela, met Terry, met the staff was just immediately supportive. And just came in every day, rebuilt my resumes, had different types of resumes for different positions, willing to do anything that was, legal, healthy, and morally acceptable. And it just was not coming together. I did odd jobs here and there and so forth. But the people here were just unbelievably supportive and helped me, gave me job leads. Different volunteers in the resource center were just phenomenal. And just kept plugging along. And actually had applied for a position with Pima County and in their recreation departments. And actually, quite honestly, Michael, I'd forgotten all about it because I had been City of Tucson, I'd been at the university, had all kinds of different positions, and received a call, asked me to come in for an interview, and did that and was hired, offered the position the next day. So it was a course of probably 2.5 years to, again, become fully, gainfully employed. It was very difficult because I know who I am. I know where I've been and what I've done and what I have to offer. And with the market being extremely uncooperative, I guess I would say, challenging, and the fact that I am, I'm no longer a young man coming out of college. I'm a little bit more experienced in my life journeys here, and I believe, I ran into that as well, as having a hard time with being, a gentleman in his late 50s looking for full employment. It's not quite as attractive, I think, in many cases. But to be able to walk through that, to process it, to ask for support here from people and from friends and family and community, just kept pushing through to do the next right thing and to not give up, not lose faith, keep moving forward, put the right energy out there, and maybe something would come together. But yes, it was difficult. And the other piece, Michael, was that everything is so electronic. I mean, I don't want to give away my age or anything, even though I already mentioned it. Everything's so electronically based. To actually get in front of somebody to have a conversation, which I believe is a strength of mine, was very difficult to crack through that electronic, scanning of your resume for certain buzzwords. And so that was an interesting thing to cope with and to get help with, again, on how to rewrite and get those words in there that might help me. One thing that I've learned, another piece that I've learned in my life, is that I do need to accept help from others and not think I've got to do this on my own. Even though I'm capable of it, I think a team approach and allowing others to help allows for that energy to stay positive and focused where it needs to be, because I believe people who will talk to you on the phone or who interview you, they're going to feel your energy. And if you're like, oh my goodness, or it's desperation, or it's anger, frustration, that plays into it. So I think staying focused, again, through the help of others and support mechanisms such as ICS really helped me to keep my head up and keep a positive. I'm not saying I was that all the time, every day. There were times where I was like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? What's going to happen here? And but they were less than the positive days, much less than the positive days. I was on public assistance. I was on access, and food stamps. And I'm not, embarrassed to say that. That's a reality. I'm grateful that I was able to tap into those services and use them to help me get to back to where not even back to go to a new place in my life, a new experience. To be humble and to allow that to happen, that's another branch of allowing others to help you. Certainly not abusing those systems at all, and however, using them to the fullest as long as I needed to. And I did do that. And again, I had family and friends who helped me say, Jim, don't worry about it. We know who you are. We support you. Just stay focused. Something's going to happen. And it did. Now all those benefits I am a completely independent, self-sustaining man again, which is a gift. And it was a very meaningful experience, this whole process.
Jim Corcoran is among thousands who have turned to others for help. In his case, Interfaith Community Services in suburban Tucson. The agency's associate director, Terry Pat Smith, is witness to the changing picture of poverty. Is the slow economy causing a change in numbers of clientele for the agency?
Yes, looking back at the numbers of households that we've served in our financial assistance program is back in 2007, we're just over 2,000 households for the year. And this year, we just finished up as of June 30th, and it's 4,023.
So more than double in just 5 or 6 year
years,
period.
yeah, and it's just been a gradual increase every year of need.
And that kind of goes in line with what we've heard about the growth of poverty in suburban areas, people in need. Here in Tucson, according to the Brookings Institution, up about 83% over the last decade or so. And you're seeing those numbers reflected in your clientele. Yes,
and the thing about poverty that we've seen here at ICS is that there's generational poverty, which is what people kind of feel as these cyclic families that just keep using the system and can't break themselves out. But the growth has been in what you call situational poverty. So something has happened, and in this case, one of the major things that has happened is the economy. People losing jobs, the health care costs, the child care costs, affordable housing, all those issues is really making the middle class, the strong working middle class, edge themselves down closer and closer to that poor or poverty level.
So people who've never had to seek help before are coming forward looking for help.
Right. Most of the people, I'd say a high percentage that come in for the case management and financial assistance, they've never had help before. This is the first time they're asking to be on the SNAP program, for the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. The first time they're asking to help with their rent or a mortgage payment. And the reason for that is maybe they've been ill and they have no health care, and the job does not give them time off, and so they've lost that money. Or they've been unemployed, there's been layoffs, there's been downsizing of employment here in Tucson, and so if they have any amount of gap in employment, it just throws their whole lifestyle off. And one of the big reasons is a lot of these people are living from paycheck to paycheck, so they don't have that safety net, of having anywhere. They're saying now you should have at least 5-6 months of safety money in case something happens. Or even a major car repair can throw them off and not have transportation. And so these are all situational things that are making this middle class, and which is a lot of the suburban people that have been really okay, and now all of a sudden they're seeking out help.
That may be a surprise to some of our viewers that in the suburbs, which we generally think of as being middle class or even beyond, especially on the northwest side of Tucson, that people would be struggling. Does that surprise you?
No, because I would say a majority of the clients that I and my case managers are seeing, I say even up to 60%, are the suburban people who are struggling now under the circumstances to make a go of it. And they are almost embarrassed or ashamed to be there. I look at it as they see themselves in the cycle of giving and not receiving. And now all of a sudden they're in that receiving part of the cycle, and it's extremely hard for them to come in here and ask for help.
When you see people struggling that way, how do you maintain a positive attitude so that you can continue the work you do? You said you've been here 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? Our philosophy, and mine especially, and I try to teach that to the other people who work here, is that you take one situation at a time. You take one client, one household at a time, and you take that as a whole situation. They may have come in for utility assistance, but they're probably struggling with a whole lot of other things. So that's your challenge, and your positive thing is to say, okay, I'm going to take this situation and help them, whether it's helping them here at ICS or referring them out. And then you've made a difference for them, because a lot of times they don't even know where to go. This is the first time situation for them. So you're opening them up to a world where now they've put into the system, and now the system is going to come back and help them. And so that makes you feel good, when you have those successes. And it can be one at a time. You don't look at all the people sitting out in the lobby or lined up at the food bank. You just take that one that's sitting right in front of you and see what you can do to make those challenges really give them a challenge too. That's important. They have to take ownership of what's happening, and most of these people do, because they want to get the situation better. They want to do what they need to do to get self-sufficient again.
In fact, the American culture is one of take care of yourself, individuality, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. What do you say to people who would say, well, the clientele here just ought to do that for themselves?
I've had situations where we have a lot of volunteers that work here, and so they're out in the community, and a majority of them live up here on the northwest side of Tucson, and they've seen their neighbors in here. They know, and we know, it could be that person sitting next to you in church or in line at the bank, or they are just as surprised that these people are their neighbors that are struggling.
That Brookings Institution study showing that poverty in suburban Tucson rose 83% in a decade also shows the increase in suburban Phoenix was 134%. Sam Sumner of the Tempe Community Action Agency spoke to me about it. We're here in the pantry of the Community Action Agency, and there's a lot of activity. Is that emblematic of what's going on with the agency's business? You're seeing a lot of demand?
Yes. As a matter of fact, this portion, obviously the food pantry, food is one of the pieces of what we do. And we've seen an increase. It's been gradual over the last 5-6 years where there's a lot of demand for people to have something to eat. Interestingly, it's summer. Summer is one of the worst times for a lot of food pantries, especially here in the metropolitan Phoenix area. Snowbirds are back home, and I don't like to call them snowbirds, but the retirees, we'll call it that, they help stock shelves by having drives and things of this nature. A lot of people are on vacation, and unfortunately food pantries tend to suffer. We still have the demand in the summer, same demand as we have in December or February or any other month. So we see a lot of food going out.
What other services does the agency provide, and what are you seeing trend-wise with the demand for those services?
Okay, for Tempe Community Action Agency, we have really two sides. We have the senior services side. That side has social, recreational events for seniors, and they're the ones responsible for the home delivered meal process, what many people across the nation know as Meals on Wheels. We've seen an uptake in the services for Meals on Wheels, and it's holding consistently on those coming into the services, learning how to reach out to a new baby boomer generation that is not normally known to reach out to the senior services. But we're trying our best to reach out to them. The other side of the house, that's my side, the traditional CAP services, that's rent and utilities. So rents, mortgages, lights, water, gas. It's the food. It is homeless services. We have a community garden. We also have a program called Health Start, which is a program for it's a prenatal program.
And you're seeing increased demand for all of these services across the way, right?
For everybody.
And what's the driving force behind that? Obviously, the economy is still very slow, and there was the big housing bust, but are there other issues involved?
Well, in Tempe, housing is a premium. We may be considered a suburb of Phoenix, but some things are kind of traditional here in Tempe, where the further south you move, the more well-to-do. Further north you go, it's more renters, more folks scrambling for housing, and housing is at a premium. You have a lot of people. I need to check the specifics, but I believe it's around in the 30%, possibly up to 50% for renters, 30% for those that are homeowners, are paying more than the 33, a third of what you bring in, which should be what you pay out for rent. You have a lot of Tempeans that are paying much more than that third for housing, and that causes people to make difficult decisions. If you're going to have housing and it costs 50% of your household budget, what gets cut? You know, is it food? Is it your utilities? Are you late on your rent or your mortgage? What gives? And
Healthcare.
And you're going where I'm. There it is. One of the worst things that could possibly happen is if you get sick, or if there's a car that breaks down, or any of those smaller things that for a lot of people across the nation, they wouldn't think anything of it. But when you're living on the edge, one small hiccup, especially healthcare, it can cause a fragile budget to become disastrous.
Do people who are having those kinds of experiences, are they in threat of becoming permanently impoverished? Are we seeing that happen?
Yes and no. The threat is there. That is a real possibility for a number of people. One of the things that we try to do here, and it's both driven from us and driven from the clients that come to us, is you have people that want to be self-sufficient, and you see people actively going about different avenues to improve whatever is going on in their lives. So if that means they come to our, and I didn't say this earlier, we have a full-time case manager here. If they come to our case manager and work in the jobs core area so that they can update their resume, strengthen their resume, find a better paying job, because you have a lot of people that are, in essence, the working poor. They have a job, but that job doesn't pay enough for them to really survive.
The program you direct, the Community Action Program, is an outgrowth of the original war on poverty from almost 50 years ago.
Correct.
President Lyndon Johnson.
Correct.
Do we need a new war on poverty? Have we lost the war? Have we won the war? Are we still battling?
Now you're going to really make me think. I don't know if we need a new war on poverty, but we probably need to look at how we can take a noble thought that was 50 years old and make it viable for the 21st century. Because some of the things that apply now, they weren't around 50 years ago. Here in Tempe, 35% of those that are living in poverty are female head of households. Now, I don't know what the statistic for that was 50 years ago, but I can guarantee you it wasn't 35%. And so we need to look at things like that.
19% of Arizonans live below the poverty line, a figure made worse by what's happening in the Phoenix and Tucson suburbs. It shows in statistics tracked by Arizona Indicators, a centralized data resource overseen by the Morrison Institute for Public Policy in Phoenix. Here's Andrea Whitsett, manager of Arizona Indicators. What are you seeing in the indicators that set trends for what's going on with poverty in Arizona?
Well, the numbers are pretty bleak. Right now, Arizona has tied for the 6th highest poverty rate in the nation, along with Alabama, so obviously not a position that we want to be in. We're at about 19% for an overall poverty rate, and that's up from about 13% just a decade ago.
So this is driven largely by what's going on with the economy over the last few years. What specifically are you seeing in that regard?
Well, I think one big impact has been on the lives of children. We have 1 in 4 Arizona children living in poverty, and there are a lot of implications and consequences of that number. For instance, food insecurity. We have nearly 500,000 Arizona children who are food insecure, meaning they don't know where their next meal is coming from.
And are you seeing this spread across the state? Is it more urbanized, more in rural areas, suburban areas?
Well, rural poverty rates do tend to be higher. For instance, if you look at Navajo and Apache County, their poverty rates are upward of 40%. And then some interesting trends we've been observing are actually with differences in suburban versus urban poverty. So there was a recent Brookings Institution report that looks at this change, and they show that there are much faster growth rates in suburban poverty than in urban poverty.
And what accounts for that?
Well, I think there are a lot of factors, the first and most obvious one being population growth. So for instance, population growth for metropolitan Phoenix. If you look at the city over the past decade, 9% change. If you look at the suburban areas, 59% change. So that's very dramatic.
The economy, again, is the driver here, but what other factors are we seeing, especially related to the housing bubble that we saw?
Well, for suburban homeowners who went into foreclosure, that was a major crisis. But coming back to the economy, I do think there's an issue with our low-wage jobs. Nearly a quarter of Arizona jobs are low-wage, and we know a lot of those are in areas like retail that tend to be concentrated in suburban areas.
Are you seeing any hints in the numbers that you look at as to how this can be ameliorated, how we can do a better job of dealing with the issues of poverty in the state?
Well, I think the way that we respond is important. So for instance, if you looked at a neighborhood that was historically low income, you would imagine that over time, certain services have cropped up. For instance, food banks or ready access to a free medical clinic, for example. And in suburban poverty tends to be a little bit more diffuse, so it's harder to target the need, and it takes time for that social safety net to shift.
Is there anything more that government needs to be doing in the way of public policy, in the way of funding, in the way of changing its approach to helping people with a safety net?
Well, one type of government response could actually be in something like transportation infrastructure. We know that low-income families tend to rely more heavily on public transit, for instance, and it takes time for bus routes or for light rail extensions to adapt and to meet the changes in demand.
There's a lot of talk about the widening income gap in the country, the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer. Obviously, this is manifested in what we see in the poverty numbers. But do you see long-term trends in that might lead us to conclude something else will happen here, that people can regain their economic footing?
Well, I'd like to think that's the case, but one number that really concerns me is a number that comes out of the CFED Assets and Opportunity Scorecard, and it's looking at a measure called liquid asset poverty, which sounds confusing, but really that's just getting at if a family has enough savings in the bank to cover 3 months of their basic living expenses. So in the event of a medical emergency, the event of job loss. And I think this number paints a more complete picture of the financial vulnerability of Arizona families. And that report found that 45% of Arizonans lack 3 months savings to cover their basic living expenses. So those are people who might be one crisis away from falling into poverty.
So that's nearly half the population.
Nearly half. And they paint the picture with some other numbers. For instance, more than half of Arizona renters are considered cost burdened, which would mean that 30% or more of their income is going straight to rent and utilities. So obviously that's a large share of a family's budget. If you have childcare expenses or other things, it can really pose a challenge.
This week's complete Arizona Public Media series on poverty is on our website, azpm.org, along with links to resources to find help. That's our program for Friday, July 19th, 2013. For Arizona Week, I'm Michael Chihak.
Production of Arizona Week is made possible in parts by a grant from the Stonewall Foundation and by the members of Arizona Public Media. Thank you for your continued support.